everyone. So I just wanted to quickly kind of run through our review of our weekly unit. So this week we are focusing on something called traditional literature. So when we have something called traditional literature, you'll see that often you'll have about 5 different types of traditional literature. So you've probably already heard this. They're called folk tales, tall tales, myths, fairy tales, and fables. Those are the five types of traditional literature. Fable, fairy tale, myth, tall tale, and folk tale. Those are your 5 types of literature. And over here, you'll notice here that we have something like a little chart here of all of the different things that you'll often find in traditional literature. So you'll see that characters do not change. So what I mean by that, or what this anchor chart means, is that throughout the story, you'll have your good characters and your bad characters. They won't change throughout the story. So, for example, if we all remember the story of the 3 little pigs, the good guys are the pigs, and the bad guy is the wolf. So, for example, in that traditional literature or that fairy tale, the characters don't change. Throughout the story, the good guys will always be the pigs and the bad guy will always be the wolf. Then you also have conflicts in a story. So conflicts in a story, what is a conflict? So you should be thinking, what is a conflict? So you probably have said or heard someone say that they had a conflict. A conflict is the problem in a story, or what goes wrong. So when the story has something that goes wrong, it is called a conflict. So for example, in The Boy Who Cried Wolf, the conflict in the story was that he continuously was lying about the sounds of the wolf, and that was the conflict at the end because nobody believed him once the wolf came. Then we also have setting. So the story has a setting. So a setting is known as where the story takes place. So the setting could be in the forest or in the woods or wherever the story may take place. And then lastly, you have a theme. The theme is the big idea about what the human needs or wants. Or the theme could eventually be the lesson or the moral that needs to be learned. So in a case like this, when we have traditional literature, it's important to be thinking about the theme of a story or what the author wants us to know about the story. So this is very important when we're looking at traditional literature. So for our assignment this week, we had the story, Can You Guess My Name? Can you guess my name? And that whole story was about trying to figure out what. So right now you should be thinking about what the story was about and why do you think, or what do you think the author's theme of the story was. When we first had read this, when we were discussing it in our Google Hangout, we were talking about how it's really interesting that some people have secret names. And we made the connection that some characters, even in a story that we read this year, has a secret name. If we remember, we had Karana. And she had a secret name. Does anybody remember what her secret name is? If you do, let me know. So throughout the story, we're talking about the secret name and how it's so important that we don't tell people our secret name. I wonder why. Why do you think it's really important to have a story about keeping someone's secret name? We're going to be getting into this Thursday and Friday, talking about the characters in the story and why it's important not to tell someone your secret name. Before we move on, I want to discuss a little bit more about what the author's voice is. So what I want you to be thinking right now is, what is author's voice? Author's voice. Author's voice. So it could totally mean anything from what an author is saying, or what the story is saying, or what the author is portraying in the story. But when you have an author's voice, it has a particular narrative. So we've written narratives in school before about stories about ourselves or about other things or other experiences we've had. So in a lot of times, an author's voice is based on the narrative's point of view. So obviously we know our point of view, our first person point of view, our third person point of view, all of those types of things. Usually when it comes to this traditional literature, this style of teaching, the author's voice is called all-knowing. It's an all-knowing point of view. And this is actually really different because we haven't quite talked about this. So we call this is a new word for us, for everybody, because we haven't talked about this just yet. It's called third person omniscient. I know, it's a little silly. Omniscient meaning all-knowing. So in this story, the author or the narrator knows everything about what's happening in a story. He knows the feelings, they know the actions, they know the dialogue. So this is called third person omniscient. So, in most cases in traditional literature, like fables and fairy tales and myths and tall tales and folk tales, the author's voice or the author's point of view is always in the third person omniscient, which means it's all-knowing, meaning that they are the ones on the outside telling us everything each character is feeling, what they're saying, what they're experiencing. That is called third person omniscient. So in the case that you have read Can You Guess My Name already, we're going to be focusing a lot in the upcoming days on third person omniscient, which is the point of view. We're going to be focusing on other characters. And we're going to be talking about all of these other things. So for homework for Thursday, or for classwork, I should say, you're going to be doing your own fable. So like I said, your own fable practice on Actively Learn. So when it comes to a fable, we're still in that traditional literature category. And we're going to dive in a little deeper to read other stories that fall underneath traditional literature. So I want you to things I would like you to take away from today's little mini lesson that we're talking about this week is traditional literature is kind of like the umbrella. So we have this big thing here called traditional literature, right? So, and this is my little umbrella. And underneath it, you have your fables, your fairy tales, your myths, your folk tales, and your tall tales. They all fall underneath the same category as traditional literature. So the more and more as we get into this Unit 4 about impacts of people and settings and stories, we're going to dive in a little deeper to find out more about traditional literature and the importance of it. Again, if you have any questions about traditional literature, especially the traditional literature, please let me know. Keep up the good work. Take your time. Don't rush through your work. You guys are doing amazing. See you soon.